Have your parents been listening to the podcast?
They are now. Then they get confused about wanting to watch it. I said, well, you can watch it if you want, or you could listen to it. You could do what you want, wherever you get your podcasts. And then they say, well, I don't know where I get my podcast because I don't know what a podcast is.
Wind up the gramophone, Mr. and Mrs. Stone. He's on. He's on. Welcome to day 25 of Trump 100 with me, James Matthews.
I'm Martha Kelner.
And me, Mark Stone.
Coming up, why Trump's plan to bring back plastic straws is dividing people in the United States.
But first, when Donald Trump dialed M for Moscow and spoke to Vladimir Putin for 90 minutes, did he bring peace in Ukraine a step closer?
Or did he make Europe just a whole lot more vulnerable?
Mark, another day of big news here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it never stops, does it? I was down at the White House early today. We've come to the conclusion that under the Biden administration, you didn't have to be there every day because there wasn't a great deal going on. This is completely different. So we're getting down there early in order to speak to them. But what we hadn't realized is that within an hour of being there, news would emerge of a phone call between Putin and Trump.
We had a great call, and it lasted for a long time, over an hour this morning. I also had with President Zelensky a very good call after that. And I think we're on the way to getting peace, I think.
Yeah, big news and a big deal. Certainly a thought in US-Russian relations.
An hour and a half.
Friends reunited. Trump, he likes Putin. When Putin had his troops on the border with Ukraine, Trump called it a genius move, called it savvy. He admires the strongmen.
It's less clear, I think, what Vladimir Putin makes of Donald Trump. But it is also the case, I think, that many believe that Putin knew who he wanted to win the US election in November. He wanted Trump to win. And if that is correct, then we saw why over the course of the past day.
Yeah. They're going to meet, aren't they?
We ultimately expect to meet. In fact, we expect that he'll come here and I'll go there. And we're going to meet also probably in Saudi Arabia. The first time we'll meet in Saudi Arabia, see if we can get something done.
We've said before that all roads seem to lead to Riyadh at the moment. It wasn't necessarily expected that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia would have such a key role in this Ukraine conflict, but he just might because there is due to be some sort of a summit in Riyadh at some point soon. Clearly, one focus of that will be the Middle East, but Putin will be there because of his relationship with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Trump will clearly be there, so that will be the first point at which they would meet. But the prospect of Trump going to Moscow or Putin coming to Washington is remarkable.
Trump's going to be happy with this. During the election campaign, he repeatedly said he would end the war in Ukraine in a single day. He hasn't managed that. He rode back from that, but he's opened up discussion.
Yeah, but you know, James, I think what we saw today was once again the American president saying the quiet stuff out loud. The delicate diplomacy that many European countries kind of knew but didn't want revealed right now. For the consummate negotiator, he doesn't seem to have played a great hand by getting his defense secretary to reveal some of the key cards before the negotiation has even got going.
Yeah, Pete Hegseth was in Munich, effectively ruling out NATO membership for Ukraine.
I can't quite understand why the defense secretary felt the need to say all he said in public. I mean, he could privately have said to all of his fellow defense secretaries across NATO, he could have said, we're not going to be able to protect you as our principal focus. Ukraine is not going to be part of NATO. Russia is going to take some Ukrainian land. He could have said all that, but quietly, privately. He didn't. He said it all very publicly. Confusing, I think.
And that was echoed by Donald Trump in a news conference that he delivered later. And that same news conference, I wonder if Zelensky was watching that.
Is freezing out President Zelensky of this process a bit? Isn't there a danger of that?
No, I don't think so, as long as he's there. But, you know, at some point you're going to have elections, too. You're going to have it.
It sounded like he was throwing Zelensky under the bus. And if there is to be a discussion, it sounds to me like Zelensky is going to be sitting at the kids' table.
Yeah, you think he might also point out that Putin might want to have elections, fair elections, free elections. But he chose not to do
Good
that.
question. We'll ask it in Saudi Arabia.
Well, yeah. But look, I think broadly what we've seen today from an American perspective is the confirmation of a profound shift in American influence, its power, its footprint even in Europe. The post-World War II principle of America as the leading protector of Western principles and Western territory seems to have been deeply eroded, maybe even abandoned.
Yeah, I think not for the first time. The primary audience is the audience at home, the domestic American audience.
Yeah, you're right.
We both know from being on the election campaign that the Ukraine war started out as a priority for voters, receded for Americans. It was a faraway war that was costing them too much money, and they cared less about it come election time. Certainly Republicans cared less about it. So there is advantage for Hegseth, Trump, the MAGA movement in flexing their muscles and essentially screaming American self-interest.
I think that, in a sense, gets to the heart of what's going on here, because what Donald Trump wants is quick wins. He likes to look successful, and he likes to look successful quickly. He doesn't necessarily think about or even care about the long-term consequences. So in the short term, what could we see? We could see the war stopping in Ukraine. That would be clearly, on a human level, a good thing for both sides. People stop dying. That's what he says. What we don't know is what the long-term consequences of that would be. Vladimir Putin emboldened. Vladimir Putin able to regroup his military, ready to fight another day. That's the danger. Short-term gains for Donald Trump. He can trumpet his success, his peace plan at home, as you say, to his audience. But longer term for Europe, it's profoundly worrying.
Yeah, and there was a Kremlin statement put out, and in it is this sentence. President Putin, for his part, mentioned the need to eliminate the root causes of the conflict. Now, those root causes haven't gone away.
No.
Essentially, it's a claim of land that he thinks should be part of Russia. And it remains an open question. On what terms might there be a deal, and on whose?
We've talked a bit over the days about this administration being accessible, perhaps being transparent. There's debate about whether it is actually transparent. It's certainly accessible, isn't it? Sense of why it may be accessible but is not transparent came over the past day with the fact that we just don't know what Donald Trump said to Vladimir Putin in that phone call. It was an hour and a half long, and yet we got one Truth Social post from Donald Trump, the detail of it. We don't know what Donald Trump committed to, and we don't know what he didn't commit to. We've got no idea. As we've said so many times before, a very new form of diplomacy.
So, on Monday night, Donald Trump used an executive order to ban paper straws, saying, and what, to be honest, a lot of us might think, they don't work. The order directs federal agencies to stop buying paper straws and effectively bans them from federal buildings. It's targeting a Biden administration policy to phase out federal purchases of single-use plastics, including straws, by 2027, and from all federal operations by 2035.
We joked just a couple of days ago that he might pose with his favourite drink, a Diet Coke with a plastic straw in it. Not quite. He didn't quite do that, but in a very Donald Trump style, he posted an image of a bottle of Diet Coke, yes, with a plastic straw in it, saying Biden's policy was dead.
Martha, you're in LA. It's a pretty liberal city, yeah? But you went out to see how people there are reacting to the big news.
Yeah, I think it's important with all these sort of executive orders that you actually get a view from people on the ground. What are people actually making of what Donald Trump is doing, what he's signing, repeatedly? So we went down to Venice Beach. We went down just before sunset to an area near the pier. Lots of people out drinking in the pavement bars, having cocktails, fizzy drinks with plastic straws in. I asked them the big question, paper or plastic? What do you think of that? He says he's going to bring back plastic straws.
There's enough plastic of any kind already. I don't know why we need more plastic of anything.
You're making do without a straw at all?
I am.
The less plastic, the better. I ride my bike all the time on the beach, and I just see all the trash coming into the ocean.
They have like the paper ones, And people get so mad because it melts in the drink. And I'm like, well, drink faster. Duh.
Now, as you might expect, heavily Democrat city, most people here voted for Kamala Harris in the election, not Donald Trump. Didn't find many fans of his policies in general, but especially this one. Although I did have a couple of people say to me, it's time to bring plastic straws back, make America plastic straws again. So, there's an element of joking about this, but there is also a serious point to be made.
Yeah, Martha, where are they actually made? Plastic straws, they're not made in America, are they?
They're mostly made abroad and predominantly in China. There's just a handful left here. We managed to find one, fortuitously, in Glendale in Los Angeles, which is not far from where we're based. And I went up there and spoke to the owner. He's a man named Ross, 75 years old, Armenian American, and he's owned this plastic straw factory since 1995.
Our business completely switched because everybody was worrying about what are you doing in this business? You're going to be out. Nobody's buying, nobody's doing. Thank you, Trump.
And I think, Donald Trump could use his straw factory as part of his PR machine, because stacked up around this factory are boxes and boxes, brown cardboard boxes with "Made in the USA" written on them. And not only was Ross celebrating this executive order on plastic straws, he was also celebrating the fact that tariffs are being imposed on China. And so that in turn will make his business more financially viable. He's trying to recruit new business through places like In-N-Out Burger. So he's got his eye on serious growth now.
But, we mustn't lose sight of the fact that environmentalists and campaigners do believe, and have for so many years believed, that plastic straws are so damaging. I was looking at some of the figures here. According to an organization rather brilliantly named Our Last Straw, they say that plastic straws are among the top 10 contributors to plastic marine debris across the globe. Nearly 7.5 million plastic straws were found on US shores during a 5-year cleanup research project. So we've all seen the images of turtles with them stuck in their noses. They do a huge amount of damage, but as Donald Trump said here on Monday, as he signed the executive order, it doesn't matter to him. He said something about, I'm sure the sharks can avoid them.
There is concern, isn't there? Trump, he's already pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, and I think there is concern globally, not just at the actions being taken by the United States, but also the example that sets.
Yeah, I was just about to say exactly that. The example it sets, people take a lead from nations like America, or at least that's the idea. And specifically on environmental issues, on recycling, you very often hear the argument from smaller countries like the UK. People understandably say, why are we going to make any difference? If the likes of China and India aren't doing much to help recycling, then there's really no point in us, a small country in Europe, bothering. Well, now you can add to that argument the fact that the United States is, from the very top, from here at the White House, basically giving up on it.
You've got the man in charge joking about bringing plastic straws back, treating it as a very trivial issue. Well, what message does that send to everyone else when they're thinking about where to put their pizza box or where to put their beer bottles? It is about that top-down messaging, I think.
Exactly. But that said, his catchphrase is bring back plastic. This is an executive order or an executive action, whatever he wants to call it, specifically about plastic straws. So I think more broadly, if you talk to people behind the scenes here at the White House, that they'll tell you this isn't about all plastic, although, as you say, the messaging is quite clear.
Telling the world to suck it up in small measure. Okay, Mark, fill us in on what else has been going on.
Plenty, as always. Tulsi Gabbard has been sworn in as Donald Trump's Director of National Intelligence. She was one of the most contentious picks, for sure, but in the end, only one Republican and a handful of Democrat senators voted against her. Donald Trump praised her in the Oval Office, saying, when she was sworn in, saying that despite her former leadership role within the Democratic Party, she was never a Democrat, he said. We discussed yesterday how the Associated Press were not allowed into an Oval Office moment because their organization has stuck to calling it the Gulf of Mexico. Today, Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, was asked about that decision that the White House had made in the briefing. And she was absolutely clear. She said, it is a fact that it is now called the Gulf of America. It is a fact.
Right.
And the inference was, if you guys don't call it the Gulf of America, then we will retaliate. And lastly, James, First Lady Melania has announced that the White House will officially reopen for public tours next week.
Now, my question to you, Mark, would be, what would you like to see on a Melania tour?
I've been round the White House, actually. I've been lucky enough to go round at Christmas when the Christmas decorations are up. And it's a spectacular building. Apparently, somewhere in there is a bowling alley, which it would be nice to see because it's kind of curious. I'd like to go down into the sort of the private bunker underneath and see what's down there. I shouldn't think that's part of the tour.
Yeah, where they shift the battleships.
Yeah.
Rename the world map. I would like to see from Melania Trump evidence that she lives there. Okay, that's it for today. If you're enjoying listening to us each day, why not follow the podcast wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode.
And remember, email us, trump100@sky.uk. Loads of questions already. There's plenty more time to send yours in for our weekend Q&A episode.
Right, that's it for day 25 of Trump 100. See you tomorrow for day 26.
Bye for now.
See you then.